Hey, hello, I'm here. Welcome. Thank you for tuning in today. Um, I don't really know where this one is going to go. What I do know is that I think I'm gonna probably keep it as like a part one. So you've probably seen the title that I've uploaded here. How to make a deal with a demon. How to make a deal with a being in the lower astral world. That is what I'm going to be talking about here very, very frankly today. So first things first, let's just start from the start. I really had notes prepared for this topic and I wanted to, kind of hit those notes. This has been a video that I've wanted to do for quite some time, and it is in conjunction with the video that I did a few months back, where I shared a very personal and very traumatic visitation to the lower astral world. And so I have been meaning to do this podcast for a while. So those that have been waiting and have been messaging me and asking me, when are you going to do it? I had some changes in my life, I lost my dog and I moved, and now I've just been kind of rebuilding myself. And I am down here in the lower hemisphere of the world, at the bottom of the world at Perth, Australia now. So we are in the middle of winter, and I'm not a winter fan at all. So, which is fitting to talk about this because, winter is a season where everything kind of shuts down and it goes to sleep. And it's got that reflective hermit type vibe. And that's what I'm very, I'm a very reflective person anyway. So this will be a long one, more than likely. So that straight up. So sometimes in my last ones that I've done, my last podcasts, I had people messaging me saying, can you please start the video? Can you please start talking about it? And it's like, this is a personal account. Okay, I'm sharing my personal experiences here. So I just kind of go where I feel I'm called in the chat. If you're looking for a video that is really quick and really easy for you to understand and it's entertaining, that's not what I'm doing here. Okay, so that's first on the table there. So it takes as long as it takes. I don't like to rush topics like this. So there may be a delay in between this video and the next one in part 2. So first of all, that's on the table. Second of all, this is for viewer discretion. So we are going to be talking about the demonic world. I'm going to be sharing my thoughts on this. And I do risk things when I do these types of videos. Subconsciously, it's kind of like a weight around me that doesn't want me to talk about this. I will probably explain that a little bit later on. And I did ask people to send in their questions. So I do have those questions here. And I will be answering each and every single one of them. That being said, let's get started. When I hear the term selling your soul to the devil, it's a very common term. We hear it a lot. We sometimes hear it in jest, or we hear it from someone that is explaining about, a Hollywood person or someone that had to do some kind of deal or exchange for something that humans usually want. Now, I have talked about in the world that we live in, the world that we are living in is based on the physicality, the material world, and the quality of one's life is influenced by the 5 factors that I've come up with. And I share that quite openly. The world that we live in is based on youth, wealth, race, beauty, and social status. Those 5 things are going to affect your life in a very deep way. Whether you like it or not, whether you're in denial about it, whether you don't want to hear it, that is the reality. Okay? So cards on the table right there. When people, just speaking in general now, when people often come to the occult, or they come to the left-hand path, or what we would call the dark path or the black path, they generally are very damaged people. And this is just observation, okay? Don't get defensive, please, if you're on that path. And a lot of you are, okay? And a lot of you are on that path and you just hide behind virtue, right? But a lot of the people that come to the occult world, and it's an observation that I have, and I've been in doing, this level of study and practice, not so much now, but this level of seeking of knowledge of the spiritual world and the mysteries about why we're here and all the rest of it, is that people tend to be powerless. They feel traumatized, or they've been victimized, or they experience lack of something. They want something. And I'm sure we all know the genie in a bottle, be careful what you wish for, and that type of thing. We think of Aladdin, okay, rubbing the lamp and a genie shows up, that type of thing. It's all part of the zeitgeist. And the law of polarity generally is that wanting something isn't necessarily a bad thing, okay? We are all creatures of desire. You desire to listen to me talk. I desire to make myself a cup of tea. I desire to have a house. It's all desire-based, okay? That's part of our nature. The material world is really the physicality from the blueprint of the spiritual world, which is really fascinating to me, because I meet people that appear to be relatively successful, doctors, lawyers, that type of high profession that society sees as successful, or people that are very kind of what would be quote unquote high up in their job, in their agency, wherever they work, in their business, and they have a sense of living in the material world, but they don't have any humility to them. They don't have any love in them. They don't have any level of spirituality to them. In fact, I would say that some of the most successful people that we would look up to in the world really have no presence of soul. The really high ones up, the ones that are kind of behind behind Hollywood, behind the puppets in front of them. And that's obviously, goes without saying. And it's interesting to me that people live in this world and think that there is nothing more than just Maya, than just physical stuff. Like, it's so crazy to think that way. But we are kind of conditioned to be non-spiritual from birth. We're not taught that we have a soul in school. We're not taught that we can create our own reality. We're not taught that. And that's all part of the agenda, okay? When people come to the occult, I'm just being really frank, a lot of them I notice not only damaged or broke, or they want something, or they've experienced what it feels like to be poor. They've experienced what it feels like to be bullied. And for me, personally speaking as well, I came to this because I wanted knowledge. I came to this because I wanted a deeper understanding of the forces behind things. As a kid, I just knew certain things and I felt very different. Definitely the black sheep of the family, black sheep of everywhere I've ever really been. But it doesn't really bother me overly anyway, because I'm kind of always just doing my own thing. A lot of the people that come to the left-hand path are sick. A lot of them are dark. And a lot of them are not really willing to do the work, the legwork within their own life to prosper. They kind of want the cheat sheet. They come quintessentially for power, for themselves. We know, without getting too biblical with you, we know that Jesus was all about service to each other. And of course, the opposite of that in its polarity is service to the self. And life is an act of consumption. It is. There was a film, I remember, it wasn't a very successful film. There was a villain in the film, and the film was called A Jupiter Ascending. I'm not sure if you guys know that film, but it's one of the lines from the villain, one of these really great lines is that he says that life is an act of consumption. And in the material world, that is true. We do have to grow, we have to consume energy to grow to meet our full potential. So that right there has always stayed with me in a lot of ways. And as humans, we're all kind of aspects of the divine, and we're all aspects of each other. But in a luciferic nature or a luciferic or satanic way of looking at this, it's not about service to other. It's about service to self and making yourself like the God, putting yourself at the top. And a lot of Satanists don't actually believe in Satan. They just believe in their kind of, it was like Anthony LaVey's satanic, the satanic Bible was one of the things that it was always based on there is no consequence, there is no law higher than what you want. Everything that you want, you can have, and it's all about the self. And I mean, it goes without saying, if you look at it like that, it's like, holy fuck, that's terrible. But that's what it is. It's about taking. So that being said, one of my biggest weaknesses was always wanting knowledge. And sometimes I get so much knowledge in my head, or I used to, that it was almost too much to handle at one time. There was a time in my life where I could almost download information directly into my brain. I can't do it so much anymore, but I will share that later in these series of videos that I'm going to be putting out. And I'm very hesitant to do this because it's so personal and confronting, but it's probably the best service I can give to people that are willing to listen, because it is my story and it's only mine to tell, but also it could help people out there that don't necessarily understand the dangers or understand what they're doing. So I think that was actually one of the things that I remember talking about back in the day was, I trust that you're mentally stable. I trust that you're able to handle this. Demons are real. They're there. And at this point, it's actually very easy to connect with one. They're absolutely everywhere. We are now living in what I would probably say is an inverted world, where everything is kind of becoming upside down. As each passing year passes, we are seeing an inversion on so many levels that people want to be famous People want to be seen. People want money. Everyone's mindset is kind of what you can do for me kind of attitude. We see children that are told that they can change their form and encouraged to do so and sterilized and mutilated. We see such an inversion of natural law that really regresses us backwards into the lower astral. This is all part of the agenda. It has always been this way and it will not stop. And we are now heading into the forefront of the time of the Antichrist, which is AI. And I have mentioned that probably by 2030, we will have AI automation robots. Although AI doesn't really like the word robot, we'll have possibly more of this than ever before on a level that can outnumber a human. Yeah. So it's a very interesting time to be alive. If you're like me, you're not a boomer, you're probably a millennial. It's coming into your late 30s, early 40s. We would have probably had the cassette player back in the day, or the record machine. The cost of living was very significantly different. Everything was very, very different, in a really good way. But we saw a transition in the world. We were here when that took place, where Facebook happened, Instagram happened, all of these things took place and has forever changed the direction of humans to commercialize themselves, to become more fragmented from each other, and to not be wholesome. Yeah. So back in the day when I was in my early 20s, I wanted to be famous. I wanted to be seen. I wanted to be heard. And I think everyone wants that anyway. Like the depth of the hole inside of you and how deep that hole goes will be directly proportionate to the level of depth or the level that you want to go to get that to be filled. Christ consciousness is love. It is. And all things are either put down fundamentally to connection or disconnection, or love, or the compensation for the lack of love that one gets or gives. With the story of the angels, part of I think it was the endoplasm that was open, that later became hell when the angels were cast down, that is directly connected to Earth, Venus being the sister planet to Earth, but also that we were already born in a physicality that is part of the lower astral. And we did see that in a book called A Paradise Lost, Milton's Paradise Lost, who talked about that. And so that's why a lot of Christianity always looked at it from a position where we were born under Lucifer, or we were born under the demonic. And then it was humans, like, it was our thing to have free will, but yet choose to love each other and choose to get along and be virtuous, rather than destroy ourselves and destroy each other. And that's when we see baptism is a big part of the religion, is that it's like those that aren't baptized don't, they're not under the protection of the Holy Trinity. And that's a big factor, actually, that I've come to understand around this. So you can probably tell I'm a little bit apprehensive because there's so much I can say, but I'm just kind of hitting some points here. I know it's a little bit disjointed, so please bear with me because it's not easy to talk about this. So when I was about 20, in my early 20s, I just knew that I just felt like unless I was famous or unless I was seen, I wasn't important. Probably just running purely on my ego and my own beauty, my own youth, my own magic, my own power that I had. And I wielded it very well. I was very aware of that. So I'll fast forward. There was a series of events around the age of 24, around 23, 24, where everything just seemed to be going wrong. I lost my car. I had experienced a little bit of homelessness. I was sleeping in my car at the time. I'd kind of left my house, ran away from home, and that's a whole other story. But I was in a very vulnerable position, and I was kind of needing or wanting someone above me to help me. I think that mentorship is extremely important in life in general. And I was wanting kind of like an older person that has money or has experience or knowledge that could just help guide me. I needed guidance, and I didn't have God back then. I did not have God. I didn't understand it. And coming into the gay world, it's all basically inverted anyway. I was very impressionable. I was very naive. So I was probably a little bit like puppy brain. And a series of events that were just happening, and I'm just going to fast forward this a lot actually so we can get to the point, is that I subconsciously called out into the ether of in my prayers or in my dreams for a savior, for someone to lead me or to help me on my journey. And I pick up a pen. I just want to explain to you the level of bad luck that I was having at the time. I'd actually pick up a pen and the pen would just run out of ink. Or I'd be, driving in a car and I'd get pulled over by a police officer for no reason. I do remember at the time I was often finding crow feathers everywhere, which I don't know why, but I often would find crow feathers just on the ground in the street. And a series of synchronicities were taking place at this time. I was living in a house with a housemate that was really quite psychotic. He was into horror movies and war documentaries, and he didn't date, and used to sit in his room, in the front room, in a chair with the lights off, just staring at the wall. I remember meeting him, and I just couldn't afford to get my own place, and I was working in kind of dead-end jobs at a movie theater at the time. And I'm just kind of speeding this up to get you to understand where I was coming from before I did this. And things were just really bad. I just couldn't sustain friendships. People were just trying to use me. There's a lot of that anyway in the gay world. It's very predatory. Very, very honest about that anyway. By the way, I want to just side note before I jump into more of this story, and I like where this is kind of going. So people can have a level of demonic attachment to the demonic world, to demons, without knowing it. Okay? And I want to make that clear. One of the things that I've learned, just on a side note, is that a lot of the richest people that I've met, or people that are very high up, or even a lot of the profession that comes up a lot around demonology is law. A lot of people that practice law, a lot of lawyers, people that deal with things that manipulate outcome but override morality. a lot of demons are attached to lawyers. And we know that the suicide rate for lawyers is very, very high because people, once they learn law, they're able to manipulate and find loopholes in things. You know, the saying goes, he who has the gold makes the rules. Knowledge is key, right? And so a lot of these elite people that move in these elite groups, they are very, very satanic. Very satanic. Even if they don't officially worship Satan and have an altar set up in their house or on one of their private properties, they are actively feeding some level of deal or exchange with the demonic world, whether they're aware of it or not. Okay? So I want to make that really clear. So someone did ask me the question, can someone work as an agent on behalf of the demonic world? And the answer, of course, is yes, of course they can. All right? So at the time, I didn't have a car, and I used to catch a bus to visit my mum and dad, and they were about 3.5 hours away from the city. I was always really lonely at the time, like just being a real deep thinker and an artist and, you know, just getting over the whole party scene, not drinking, not smoking, and just I wasn't really having a good time. To be really honest, I never really fitted in with the gay world anyway. I could just see straight through it. And this particular time I was really down and out. And suicidal ideation has always been something that has plagued me, or haunted me, I guess. I don't want to go on to that too much, but I will say that, yeah, a lot of dark thinking of just kind of the hopelessness of my life has always played a part in a pull towards this level of nature of topic, to put it mildly, okay? So this particular time I didn't drive, I came back on a bus to my mum and dad's, and I used to go hiking up in the hills. And I do want to make this really clear that this is all real, and I'm just going to summarize it because I don't want to go too deep into it, but I'm sharing with you the gist of it. I used to know things anyway when I was a kid, just things that I'd probably carried on now I see from past lives. I used to build little shrines and altars as a kid. I used to collect little animal skulls or flowers. I used to pick flowers and pine cones off the ground or whatever and make these little shrines, and I'd get bits of twine and like put sticks together and like tie them together and make little shapes, like little dolls and things. I didn't understand what I was doing. I didn't have a clue. It just felt very natural to me. And I think that's what the term would be. So I think the term would be natural witch. I think that might be the new age term, but I was very much a natural witch. I just had an innate understanding as a kid that there were forces behind things that were working towards things or against things, and I could feel that. I used to always go hiking as a kid growing up in a country town. Maybe you did too. I used to ride my bike around a lot and go and explore caves and try and climb up hills around my town and just kind of get lost in my imagination in this kind of, I would probably say, like free association, I guess, where it's like you just kind of go feral. That's kind of the state that I spent a lot of my time in as a kid, and that's kind of how it was. I used to ride my bike to the cemetery a lot down the road from my house and sit on the gravestones, on the plots in there. And people would drive past and look in there and go like, oh, he must be visiting someone that died. But I wasn't visiting someone that died. I just was trying to connect with the dead. I could hear things in my head. Or not. I'm not. When I say, I really want to make this clear. I'm not crazy. I've never been diagnosed with any level of mental disorder on that level. So I don't have schizophrenia. I don't have voices in my head. I wasn't taking magic mushrooms or nothing like that. I just want to make it really clear. There was no antipsychotic medications involved in my childhood ever, okay? I just knew things and I heard things in the wind or in my dropping into my consciousness. As a kid, I probably wasn't really prepared for for that level of like open crown, if that makes sense, if you guys know what that means. So it was very alarming, but that's just kind of what I did. I didn't know that spirits don't hang out at the cemetery, but I didn't know that. And anyway, so long story short, just so you understand where I'm coming from as I come back to my story about doing this and conducting this level of connection. I'd never really had the Bible around me much. I never really studied or followed it. We had classes at school, but I just kind of got out of it. My dad was very anti-religious, so he always saw religion as bullshit, you know. And he'd say stuff like, I don't want my kids doing any of that. They're not doing any of that, you know, Bible bashing shit, you know, that type of way. That's how he was. And that's how he is to this day, which is fair enough. That's his call. But I was kind of indoctrinated and kind of came in, you know, Starter Kit 101 was very much like, God doesn't exist. God isn't interested in me. He doesn't want to hear what I have to say, that type of thing. And so my knowledge of pursuing that intrinsically was never really interested in that. And that's why I was always kind of attracted to like that scorpionic energy, which is like nature, animals, skulls, crystals, bones, plants, earth, you know, understanding. Like I used to watch whales on TV a lot, or animals. When I used to go to the beach, maybe you did this too. I used to go really far out into the water if no one was watching. It was very, very dangerous, but I used to do it, and I used to feel the pull of the water around me and the energies and the forces of the ocean, and just understood, you know, that it's all connected. And so anyway, I drove up, I got to Mansfield, my hometown, and I ended up going for a hike. And I was hiking for quite a while. I was on foot, so I had to get past all of the streets of the town before I could get up into the hills. And I've always been attracted to pine trees, for obvious reasons. If you're in this level of knowledge, you'd know what pine is, what it means. It has a very specific scent, the scent of pine. It has a very powerful property. I don't understand, even to this day, why I'm so attracted to photos of like Canada or Yellowstone Park and places like that in the world that are very, like it's not native to Australia's like environment, because we don't really have pine trees naturally here. That's a foreign tree that came from Europeans when we came and colonialized and settled here. But there was pine plantations up there in the hills, and I'd go up there and sit under a pine tree. And I remember this particular day, I just was so like just out. Everything was going wrong, and I couldn't see a way out, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And rather than just panic and cry, I remember just sitting under a tree, and it was all these rocks on the ground, just rocks. It was very kind of simple. There was nothing really there. And I had like a backpack. I had a few bits and pieces that I'd put together from my dad's garage. So it was kind of things that I'd grabbed at the last minute, like a water bottle, a knife, a little knife, like a pocket knife. And I remember something really came over me very strongly, because I was calling out into the wind and just saying, like, if anything is out there, if anyone can hear me now. I beseech you. I call out to you. Hear me. And I wasn't really, by the way, this is not something that I'd recommend anyone do. Be very specific when you're calling out to things. Don't just call out to anything, all right? It's like dangling a net or casting a net or a fishing line into something that you don't really know what's out there on the other side. And I remember sitting under this tree, just being so out of it and saying, look, if life has anything left for me, it's going to have to, now is the time, because I'm really I am at the end of this, man. Like, I've had enough of this. I want to have the good life. I want something to happen for me. And even now, like, I still feel like there's something else that I'm supposed to be doing, but I'm working on that now from the right place. But this wasn't the right place at the time. I was asking for what I was asking for. I'm not going to share that directly, but yes, if you get what I mean. So called out, and I remember getting a very, very strong heat on my back. And it was strange because I wasn't facing the sun. By the way, since I did this little kind of ritual, the sun being the light bringer, if you know what I mean, is about light and the sun. The sun gives me power and strength. Even to this day, I do not do well in cold weather. I do not do well in dark places. When the sun hits me, it gives me obviously there's a physiological thing that happens because it shifts we're kind of the same stuff as a bloody tree or a plant. So it's some kind of thing that happens with a human as well. But for me, it was always way stronger than that. And I was able to look at the light directly and it wouldn't damage my eyes at all after I'd done this. Now I reached into my backpack and I remember, and I said, I'm going to call out to whatever it is and offer whatever I have to the spiritual world, to ... And I just kind of went into like free association in my head where I wasn't in meditation where I was emptying my brain. I was just in a state of like just sitting there hovering and being like, whatever comes through, I'm holding space for it. I'm open for it. And I remember doing something called circular breathing, where you might know this, when someone sits down and they say the same thing over and over again, and they say it over and over again. This is actually a tool that's used in spell work. It's a tool that's used in manifestation. So when you say, for example, could be, I want to be famous, 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 I want to be famous, I want to be famous. So when you say something over and over again, the frequency of the word starts to connect with the energy that you're projecting. And the strength of the projection will be proportionate to the desire or the pain in this case, because pain gets shit done. Okay, a lot of stuff gets done from pain. A lot of stuff gets done from anger. And I had a lot of anger in me anyway. I'd been in my early, I can't say it on YouTube publicly, but yeah, I had some very bad experiences actually. So I was carrying a lot of pain, and I still do to this day, but I didn't know how to harness it within myself back then. So I was just tapping into that pain and projecting that pain and frustration and isolation and loneliness and just projecting it into the want of what I was asking for. And this heat started coming onto my back very strongly. It wasn't coming from the sun because the sun was facing me. It was coming from like someone had placed two hands on my shoulders like a father would to his son. Like it was a very strong masculine presence that was there. And I felt it on the back of my shoulders, just placing these beautiful big hands. I know it sounds strange, but it was like the word beautiful, it was very beautiful. These beautiful big hands just kind of pushed onto my back, and I could feel it in my mind's eye. And I started to feel this energy start to merge with my own. And very instinctively, in the moment, I reached into the backpack and I pulled out like the stuff that I had brought with me. And I pulled out, I don't know, for whatever reason it was like, like those makeup things where it's like a makeup, when a woman does like makeup or something, and she's like, it's like a little circular mirror, and you open it up and it's got like a, powder or some kind of like compact thing, and then it's got like the mirror in the front, so she's on the go. It was like that. I had one of them in my backpack, and I had the the knife, the tool, the knife. And I also had a piece of chalk, a white piece of chalk was in my backpack. I don't know why the hell I packed it. I don't know what it was doing on the little hike that I was going on. I didn't, maybe subconsciously, looking back at it now, it was like something was telling me to bring it. And I brought these things with me, these items I brought with me. And I went into this kind of zone, and it was like straight away, I just took the knife and I placed the mirror in front of me on the ground, on these rocks. It was like, there were just kind of slate type rocks around on the side of the hill under the pine tree. And I took out the piece of chalk and I drew a circle around, and I started going around anti-clockwise with it, around and around and around again. And it's like I was calling out, and took the knife. Oh, first of all, I drew obviously a cross, if you know what I mean, an inverted pentagram. And I took the knife and I pushed it into the my middle finger really deeply, the tip of it, and pushed and slid it across just enough to pierce the skin. It was quite deep, and blood started coming out of my thumb, just bright red blood. And I pushed it into the mirror. I rubbed it into the mirror into like a slight symbol. Yet again, not really entirely sure what the symbol was. These days, I now know. I won't share that sigil with you, but I want you to understand that a sigil is a symbol that is used as it's called an N. It's a demonic calling card. So all different demons have different sigils, particularly in the Goetic, okay? So when a human is putting their antenna up to the spiritual world and they are using the sigil of that particular demon, they're basically connecting to it on a stronger level. So now, by the way, I'd never been shown how to do this. I did not, I'd never seen, this is not a thing, it's not something I watched in a movie, it's just something that I did. And I was there and then making a level of exchange. So, yes. Part 1. I think maybe this is where I should leave it. We're at, 43 minutes? I've covered a fair bit here, and then I've started my story. Perhaps I'll just maybe leave it here as part 1. But yes, I began to make my first real deal to the demonic world in exchange for safe passage in the next few years of my life, and financial security, and all of the things that I was kind of asking for. So I'm 38 now. I'm turning 39 in November this year. You do risk, I think part of me is thinking like, oh no, what will people think? But I also think it's important just to tell the truth. And I think it's probably important that I do share this with people, my story and parts of this with people, because it's real. And if I could do it, other people could do it, I'm sure. I've had time to process this and assess where I'm at in my life. And certain people came into my life for different reasons. As you get older, you kind of reconcile a lot of this. And By the way, I don't do this anymore. I don't practice any of this anymore. I'm absolutely moving away from all of this and have been doing so since the last year or so. I recently have purchased my first Bible, and I have it on my bedside table. So in relation to people asking me, am I leaving the occult? And I was talking about wanting to do a video on leaving the occult. The answer is really yes, to a sense. But I don't think that I'm going to I can't give up everything that I've learned, and I can't change a part of who I am now. Because if you came to my house, you'd see like crystals and all of this stuff that I've got and all of this tools that I've used. My aesthetic is very Venus anyway, like animals and things like that in my house. So and I published a tarot deck as well back in the day, which you guys already know. That's probably how you found me, is I created the Goliath tarot deck. So yes, I am a publisher of sorts of an occult item, and that's how I've supported myself since 2016, 2017, other than doing massages and things like that to sustain myself as an artist. So yes, I think we'll leave it here. That was where I wanted to leave it. I think this is a pretty good part 1. It's a good introduction. And then in part 2, I'm going to just jump into what became of my ritual, what became of the next few years of my life, and then kind of speed up to another 10 years and where I am now, and share this story with you. Demons don't necessarily want your soul. Sovereignty, by the way, I want to make this clear. Sovereignty of a human soul or any level of being its natural state is in sovereignty. The devil or Satan or Lucifer or whatever, they don't want your soul. What they want is for you to know about them. What they want is for you to reject God. They want you to reject all that is pure and holy. They want you to defile yourself. They want you to destroy yourself. They want you to hate yourself because they hate you. Okay? And so I want to make it clear, any level of bargaining with any level of being like this will never end in the favor of a human. It just will not. It won't. Okay? And it doesn't matter how airtight you make these types of levels of deals. A lot of people would probably see Lucifer as like a businessman. It's like you're striking a deal with him. But there'll be so many clauses in it. Like, I think I just come back to like the Aladdin thing, where it's like, when Aladdin asked to be a prince, and it's like, yeah, but what type of prince? Like, terms define, be specific. There's always going to be a loophole. All right. Just one of the questions quickly before I leave here and call this part 1 and call this a day here is, someone asked me, can a demon heal you? The answer is yes, a demon can heal you. Yes, a demon can restore you on some kind of level, but nothing like an angel can. Demons, healing is not really what a demon does. Demons would rather give you a breadcrumb and then destroy you later. Okay, so that's not what they do. Angels can heal. Healing energy is integration and putting something back together and mending it. Fragmentation is pulling it apart and ripping it apart. And so remember, in essence, a demon is the opposite of an angel. So it is about chaos, destruction, that type of nature. So I will leave it here. I hope that you've enjoyed this. I will be answering the questions in part 2. Just give me some time. I will take my time with this. I will come back and continue it. I know if you've been listening, it's a lot and it's a bit of a chat. Most of you probably at this stage in this world already know about a lot of this anyway. So I'm just leaning in very gently so people that don't know about this stuff can start to get an understanding that this is very, very real. It is everywhere. A lot of it is literally in plain sight. A lot of logos that you see for businesses are actually based on sigils. A lot of occult items and shapes and things are all out in the world. So I'll leave it here. Lots of love to you, and thank you for taking the time to tune in to this part 1. And I will upload this and come back and do part 2. All right. Lots and lots of love, and thank you for being patient with me and just, being here. And yes, leave a comment below if you want to ask me more questions, if you're interested, and I will. I promise I will be answering those questions. I promise. Okay. All right. Okay. Bye.